going to go ahead and get started here. Welcome to lesson 4. We're going to go over eyes today. Um, we're going to jump right into actually drawing the eyes. Now, usually, and I've said this multiple times, I'm usually very against lines. However, in some situations, I'm actually going to drop the opacity. On some situations, lines are helpful. Especially for when you're doing things like eyes. So, an eye is a very unique shape. It is a spheroid that is nestled inside of a couple of skin folds. So we're going to get some of the... Oh yeah, see, this is why I don't use Photoshop for this kind of stuff, because Photoshop is weird with how it does hatching. You can't have any smoothing on at all, or else it tries to help you. But yeah, so we're gonna just kind of flesh out this eye shape here. And I've already kind of messed up the shape of it a little bit here. So yeah, kind of more like that. And then you'll notice that there's actually some separation between where the lashes are and where the eye meet. Most people, you see the lashes coming like this. In drawings, that's not actually where lashes grow out. You'll notice there's actually a separate lid part here and here. And it comes down like that. And this is actually where the lashes grow out from. And because they're coming towards the perspective of the camera here, you don't really see a whole lot of them in the middle, but you see these really long lashes coming out here. They kind of dip down in front of the eye and come up over here, and then we got a couple that kind of do like this over here, and then over here. Underneath, it's a very similar style where there's another ridge that exists under here. It's not as pronounced as the top one, but it does exist there. And then you see we got lashes that are not as kempt as you would normally expect from a photography model type situation. Usually when you grab a photo of an eye from somebody like that, there's no microphone from me on your end, or no microphone for you. Night Moon, who's talking. Okay, he could not find his USB. Okay, thank you. So, the actual shape of the iris, like I say, it's a lot of this is just, especially because it's drawing circles, you just kind of flesh the circle in as you go. That's still not right. Hey, there we go. The pupil always goes directly in the middle of the area that you're drawing for the iris. So just a quick brush up of anatomy. This part of the eye here is called the iris. This is the pupil. This is the cornea. This is the lid, lashes, and brow ridge. And tear duct. Most people forget about the tear duct. And this is slightly off already, and I can't tell why, because the end of this, it looks slanted. Yeah, it's not gonna be perfect. I already know that. Now you will notice if I zoom in on this eye here, the interior of this pupil is very, very black. It is pure black. Near towards the edges here, you start getting these little featherations. That's actually the part of the eye that contracts and expands. That is the lens, I think, isn't it? No, I know what it's called on the camera. I can't remember what's called on an eye now. But essentially, this part of it is what opens and shuts, and there's little tiny, very tiny little muscles that actually control all that inside the eye itself. And a lot of times you'll see when I draw pupils, I will do this kind of thing around the edges of it because it does look like that, especially when you get some of the gradations of light in there. I'm going to turn down the opacity brush a little bit more, a little bit more. But this particular part of the eye is normally what you see colored in the actual iris itself. And those are, I mean, that's just basically the part of the eye that allows the pupil to contract and expand. It's also good to note that because this particular organ is actually bending light, that a lot of times you will see things like this. This over here is a part of this that is existent simply because the light is being bent around, and therefore there's a shadow being placed there, kind of like in a droplet of water. If you look at a drop of water, there's always going to be one side that has a shine on it, and the other side is going to have a devoid of light because of how the light's refracting through it. In this particular situation, we have a couple of highlights over here. And again, I apologize if you're drawing traditionally. You know, you really needed to put those in as you were putting them in, because you really can't do that later. I mean, you can. It's just much more difficult to erase it as you're going. And yeah, and then you kind of start to work on the actual inside of the eye itself here. So you'll note that there is actually a part of this on the inside at the bottom that you can see that's physically there. So that is actually that's the part of the lid that's actually in contact with your eye. That's part of the mucous membrane of your eye. That's what is actually sliding over it and clearing out dirt and debris from the actual cornea. And because this is actually much darker than a lot of it, we're going to make sure that we darken this whole thing up a lot, because yes, this is a large recess in the eye here. But yeah, and then over here, because this is a sphere, if you've never actually seen an eyeball outside of an eye socket, I would highly recommend you go look at one. Because it is literally a weird looking sphere that sits inside of your face. And once you know that, it makes looking at them really weird for everybody. Oh yeah, you can never look at most human anatomy the same way after you really, really study it. I don't know how doctors still have sex with people like that. And we're gonna get this in here, and I'm gonna get this in here, and we're gonna do that. So again, this is not a fantastic representation of this particular eye. It is a representation of an eye using a reference here, but you can see a lot of the shape and form that most people simplify it down to. When you see a lot of anime eyes, it's usually something like this with these large this, and then you've got like this, and then you've got like this crazy huge pupil here, and then you usually have like some other shinies and some sparklies going on here, and then you have like that. That is, yeah, I mean, again, that is just, don't, that, yeah, they can't see that in the video, though, Jake, so I'm doing it on this canvas. But you see the reason why they've done it that way, the reason why that they've simplified it to that, is because this is, one, a little disturbing to look at really up close, and two, this is a lot quicker and easier to draw, and it's very expressive. But it has all of the elements that let you recognize it as an eyeball. We really don't look for every aspect of the anatomy of an eye. We look for the primary things. Do they have a lid? Do they have top eyelashes? Do they have a bottom eyelash? What position is that bottom eyelash in? Because if you were to take this and do this, based on the mouth, based on the eyebrow, this can mean two different, very different things. So if we do an eyebrow that looks like this, that's a look of concern. If we do an eyebrow that looks like this, that's a look of contempt or anger. If we do an eyebrow that looks like this, that's just kind of like confusion. And based on how those things are rendered here as well, if we take this and say, all right, now I'm going to kind of bring the lid down so that it's kind of drooping over here, have this thing a bit more prominent, and then do the same thing here, that's sad. That's depressed. This is hurt, betrayed. This is bored. There's so much that can be expressed just through how the eye is rendered. And like I say, we don't need to see a whole lot of it to be able to make those interpretations about what's going on with them. You only need to be able to see the primary assets, which is the lower lid here, the upper lid here, and the pupil itself. The rest of the face gives you a lot of the information that you need as well. We're going to move on to the next eye I've pulled here. And let's not do this eye. This eye is just another... a lot of close-ups. I got a lot of close-ups eyes. Oh, yeah, here we go. Side view. Side view eyes are fun. So we had just talked about how these things are technically all just like a variation of skin folds. Side view eyes exemplify that, and you can really see the jelly squish that is the ball itself inside of it when you're looking at an eye directly from the side like this. Gonna kind of get the lashes kind of coming out like this, and then same thing here. So again, we're going to kind of map out some of the reflections that we've got here, and then you'll note that the eye itself, like the part that you recognize as an eye, is actually just this. It's just a flat disc. And the reason that you're seeing color here is because, again, the refraction is pulling the color towards you this way. The actual pupil is just this little black speck in the very back of it. Right? And then you have just an eye that comes out this way, and then looks like they have a little bit of an eyebrow coming up over here. But for the most part, this part of the eye is actually kind of all just getting shadowed. Same thing down here, we've got this. And you've got a little bit of this. Like so. And this is an eye. This is what an eye looks like from the side perspective like this. But being able to understand the anatomy of the eye from multiple angles like this gives you the advantage of when you're trying to draw things from something that either isn't 3/4 view and or something that isn't perfectly, front on view. Drawing things in profile is something that you do, well, quite a bit in general. So knowing the anatomy of the eye, you can actually rotate your head all the way around. Otherwise, you start getting the issues where you have a head that's in profile, like so, and then the eye is drawn like this. And it's like, cool, but that's not what an eye looks like if that was a perfect profile view. It's just not. It's just not what eyes look like. So definitely want to make sure that you find a couple that are going to be in this particular view, just because it's good to understand the underlying anatomy and to understand how, this is literally a ball that sits inside of that socket and how it's interacting with that socket, how it works with the lids, how eyelashes actually show up on the eye itself, all very important things. So we're going to do real fast pair of eyes. Pairs of eyes are a lot more difficult because you have to make sure that they match. So this person has very clean lashes, which I appreciate because it makes it much more difficult, or much less difficult to try to render the eye out. That's too far over. Okay, come on. There you go. Photoshop is not a happy camper on my computer right now, and I don't know why. I wish it was, because it would be better if I could use the program how I need it to be. And she has like a weird smiley face inside of her eye. And you'll know her eye itself is actually almost as dark as her pupil. And nearly as dark as her lid itself. Now, in order to be able to calculate the other eye, we're probably going to have to do a bit more of the anatomy in here. So I'm going to measure from here to here. Up here, we're going to start having this nose come straight down like this. He's got an eyebrow that's coming over like this. Going to do a little bit of the shadowing for this particular part of the nose, coming down here. And then we can say, okay, the width of this eye in total is about the same width as it is to the start of over here. So we're going to go over here, we're going to start with The lid over here. And we're going to do it better than that because that was awful and I should feel bad about it. Sorry, I've been drawing literally for 3 straight days now and it's really starting to take a toll on my arm. Same thing over here. Make sure that the values match between the 2 eyes over here. Make sure that smaller details of things like the shadow that is being created from the face shape is being rendered over here, like so. Make sure that you are using existing points in your image as a measurement tool, so that you can measure out exactly how far out something should be comparatively to something else. We're gonna make sure that we get the shadowing for here. Like this. Eye sockets are actually not terribly deep, so it doesn't go very far in. The value for the eyebrows are slightly higher than what I gave them here. Again, she has very slight shadowing here. She has fairly deep shadows under here. She's got a little bit of a thing right there. A little bit of that up there. She's got the hair that covers up and goes down like this, and there's a little bit of shadowing that goes for here. So, again, not perfect, but that is essentially how you go through and you sketch out pairs of eyes. The easiest way is obviously to do the base details first, make sure that they match, and then go in and do the details. When you're doing pairs, it's just very important to make sure that they at least look like they're of the same person. I've done it on my own drawings, where if you have an eye that looks like this on one side, you can't go over here and do an eye that looks like this. Those are from 2 different people. Even if you try to make it into like a say what, you know, the shape of this eye couldn't even be this eye, because of the way that the width of it's wrong, the shape of it's wrong, everything about it just doesn't match. So it's actually 2 different eyes that are just being pasted onto the same person. That's the biggest thing that you have to practice with eyes, in my opinion. The actual anatomy of an eye is not that complex comparatively to something like a nose or a mouth. The anatomy for those is much more varied, where there's a lot more shape, there's a lot more potential possibility for how it can be arranged. Eyes are pretty straightforward. You have lids, you have lashes, you have pupils, you have irises. In terms of how to simplify them later, that's something, there's a lot more options that you can utilize when you're going into that. And there's a lot of good resources for kind of stylizing eyes and how to draw them so that you can more accurately represent things like where they're looking and the expressions that they're giving. You're going to be drawing eyes, same basic thing that we've been doing. 10 eyes, at least 5 of them, pairs.